Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to read to you the official land acknowledgement of the Occaneechi Band of the Saponi Nation. I would like to acknowledge that we are on the land of the Eno, Tutelo, Saponi, Occaneechi, and Shakari Native people. You are welcome here. We are gathered today on the land that was traditionally part of the territory of the Saponi people in the Piedmont of what is now the state of North Carolina. This area is not far from the great trading path used by both native people of this area and non-native people during the early years of contact. The Saponi people, whose descendants include the Occaneechi Band of the Saponi Nation Indian tribe, still thrive and live here in this region, officially recognized by the state government of North Carolina. The Occaneechi are connected to this land spiritually and physically. It provided all we needed to sustain our communities. We hunted in the forests, fished in the streams, and grew our crops in the woodland clearings. We picked the wild grapes, gathered the acorns, and harvested in popular bark to build our homes. We raised our children, protected our families. We bonded and won with this land. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow, it flows within our veins. Despite how the landscape has changed, regardless of the concrete, asphalt, and the steel that covers it today, it is still our home. And the bones of our ancestors sleep in this part of our mother's earth. As we come together, do not forget that our people love this land. Although most of you who live and work on it today have little knowledge of our past and present existence, we did not sell or willingly vacate the land. So it remains in our hearts. As the great Chief Seattle said, every part of the earth is sacred to my people. Every shining pine needle, every sandy shore, every mist in the dark woods, every meadow, every humming insect, all are holy in the memory and experience of my people. Quote, this land does not belong to man. We belong to the land. The Occaneechi people, the Yasa, ask that you will keep these thoughts in mind while in place and treat it with respect, love, and care that our ancestors did as we do so today. Our hope is that we all exist and acknowledge the sacred land together in a good way.
Good afternoon. Indeed, the United States of America was founded on stolen land, built by stolen people, and made great by means of a stolen history. Indian tribes once dwelt on and stewarded the land where our cities, factories, and farms now stand. African people and their descendants, whether enslaved or incarcerated, built the American infrastructure and economy. Then, adding insult to the injury, the white supremacists tried to hide, bury, and extinguish the truth of the terrorism that has haunted our history. So I am Renee Price, representative in the North Carolina General Assembly and also co-founder of the Orange County Community Remembrance Coalition, or OCCRC. OCCRC is comprised of community organizations, individuals, and local governments working in tandem with the Equal Justice Initiative to confront the legacy of racial terror as it relates to lynching in America. Thank you for joining us today as we, as a community, remember several victims of racial terror lynching in Orange County, North Carolina. The men whose lives we celebrate today are among over 4,400 men, women, and children murdered in the United States by lynching between the post-Civil War period and World War II. As I wrote when we founded this coalition, our work is to disrupt and overcome the detrimental systems and mindsets that have plagued America for generations, and to help usher forth a future of humanity, equity, and justice for all of us. So we are here today to uncover and reclaim our history, which includes acts of racial terror perpetrated upon Black, Indigenous, and people of color, or BIPOC communities. We must acknowledge our past and recognize those who sacrificed dearly so that people of every hue and creed can coexist. To my African American and Native American sisters and brothers, we must write our own narrative, tell our story, control the narrative of our existence. Then all of us have the responsibility to pass along to our children and grandchildren the knowledge, the accuracy, and the truth of our legacy and the legacy of America. And as much as I wanted to keep politics out of this event, racial terrorism had an aspect of politics. Because as people began to gain political awareness and acuteness, they were lynched. So if you paid any attention to the recent policies, laws, and decisions by the General Assembly or the Supreme Court just yesterday, in no way have we seen the final days of terrorism in this country. So again, thank you for your presence as we together strengthen the foundation that will support generation after generation in perpetuating the fight for freedom, humanity, and equality until peace and justice reign throughout the land. And finally, remember that when they took the life from the bodies of the men, women, and children that they lynched, they set free their spirit. And today, when we connect with that spirit, well, I'll let you finish the end of that sentence. Thank you.
Good afternoon and welcome. My voice normally doesn't sound like this, but allergies and stuff like that. So bear with me. 5 years ago, this week, from April 26th through April 30th, I was in Montgomery to attend the grand opening of the Legacy Museum and the National Museum for Peace and Justice. You see, I knew at that time that there was a steel column representing racial terror and lynching in Orange County on the grounds of that museum. And on that column was the name Manly Macaulay, who was lynched here in Orange County in 1898. And I knew that there was interest. In fact, I was interested in partnering with EJI to do the work necessary to claim that duplicate monument and someday have it erected here in Orange County. And so that fall, the fall of 2018, Renee Price and I co-founded the Orange County Community Remembrance Coalition, and she's spoken to you about what we're seeking to do and what we have done over the past 4.5 years or so. In a nutshell, educate and engage the community on the legacy of racial terror lynching in Orange County and in this state, and how it impacts our society even yet today. And this program today is a part of that effort. We call it a soils collection ceremony. And there was one done for Amanda McCauley in 2019, I believe. And so at that time, EJI had not recognized or acknowledged that there were 5 additional racial terror lynchings in Orange County in 1 year in 1869. And so this ceremony relates to those 5 victims. And in terms of the soil and why it is so important, I don't think I could say it any better than Brian Stevenson, the executive director of the Equal Justice Initiative, who wrote, "In this soil, there is the sweat of the enslaved. In the soil, there is the blood of victims of racial violence and lynching. There are tears in the soil from all those who labored under the indignation and humiliation of segregation. But in the soil, there is also the opportunity for new life, a chance to grow something hopeful and healing for the future." And that is what this effort is about, is looking at our past and helping it to inform our future. And in the process of collecting the soils from the various representative sites where these lynchings occurred in 1869, that we did on Thursday, and then yesterday in cleansing the soil, there were roots. We found roots. And so the other thing about what we're doing here is that our current racial inequities and injustices and horrors are rooted in our racial past. Even as recently as Renee mentioned yesterday, you had 4 or so decisions from the North Carolina Supreme Court related to areas that led to this racial terror. So if we look at felon disenfranchisement, suppressing the vote and making sure that black people in particular don't vote, that was a case yesterday that took away the right that the court had decided several months earlier. You have cases related to education. You have Leandro. You've got the legislature now talking about giving public money to private schools for whatever purpose. There's so many issues that gerrymandering, voter ID, all of those cases are rooted in this past. And so it's important that we do this work not just because of because it happened in the past, but because it is happening now. There's a lot more I could say, but I know my time at this mic is limited, so I am going to step aside. But before doing that, I do want to thank, because I think there's going to be some people who are going to be thanked toward the end of the program, but there's some people who played significant roles in this who may not be on that radar screen. And I want to mention a few names right now. I want to mention the Assistant Clerk of Court, Doris Wilson, who helped us identify family members of the Morrow family who are descendants. And so would not have gotten there, I don't think, without her assistance. I want to acknowledge Peter Woods, a historian, Dr. Deborah Hamlin. I want to acknowledge Seth Koch, whose work actually we used to get EJI to acknowledge these 5 lynchings of 1869. I want to acknowledge our Mark Shelton, Register of Deeds, who did phenomenal work in helping us track down records and identify people and information. And then the clerk of court, Mark Kleinsmith, Penny Rich, who have been so helpful in allowing us access and our being able to convene here this afternoon, and then the sheriff and his folks for their assistance also. So thank you very much, and now you'll hear from North Carolina Support Laureate, who really needs no introduction, so I won't introduce her.
Love note to the ancestors. We cannot prevent the birds of sorrow from flying over our heads, but we can refuse to let them build nest in our hair. Who stops to record the whimpering of an ocean? I've seen you wrestling with the frozen tears of a moon. I know how you measure your own heartbeats with the stretching of olive branches. I've heard you scolding the wind for changing her course, her song. I listened to you scrape your crystallized tears from the roof of your mother's grave, from the hem of your sister's shroud, from the womb of a raped daughter. I have watched prayers crawl up your arms and dig into your hearts. I become blinded by all the light that lives there, all the light that your hands continue to harvest, all the light and love you offered to each Middle Passage morning when you decided to live and scatter your seeds. Dear ancestors, thank you for being our mirrors, showing us that we are not the stories that anyone has made of us. We never were. We are energy and matter, untethered from those who meant to contain us. We are rearranging the structure of who we be, who we are becoming collectively, in the face of any puny narratives thrust upon us. Dear ancestors, we are here now, bringing the light, the compassionate fight for justice and equity, as your generations move into spaces that were denied to you. We are here now, as the truth tellers, ensuring that our unborn generations will know the story of your journey in this place of Orange County. Dear ancestors, we are here now to nurture, manifest, and protect your wildest dreams that were muted, silenced, erased, and made invisible. We are here now, standing on your sacred ground, offering you the peace that your soul and heart yearned for. I wanted to ask the trees. I wanted to ask the trees, do you remember? Were you there? Did you shudder? Did your skin cry out against the skin of my great uncle's skin? Was the smell of bark a different smell from the smell of meat flesh, human meat flesh? Beloved father, husband, lover, friend, man flesh. Could the air discern burning tongue from burning arm? Does the neck bone stay intact or grizzle like the shaft of toes, fingers, ears? I wanted to ask the trees, were you there? Did you shudder? Are you an elder that wailed out loud when they strung him up on your youngest branch? No mercy even for the lynching of new sprawling birch limbs, just learning themselves how to crawl towards an unemancipated sky. Are you a grandchild or great-grandchild of the tree that drank his blood, the tree that cried tears into the rope around his neck, his arms, his legs. I wanted to ask the trees, but the ground spoke first. Annoying, perfectly manicured azaleas, annoying, perfect graves of perfect skeletons, whose blood-stained hands are forever etched on the hearts of my ancestors who cry out to me. Plantation ground scratches the soles of my feet. Ancestors beg me to lie down, be still. They waited so long for this day, when someone would come and dance with their spirits. They are everywhere, whispering, holding up this house that dares to ignore them, holding up a sanitized history and herstory, one for the trees, one for us. I wanted to ask the trees, do you remember? Did you refuse to hold his weight? Did your branches crackle? Did you refuse to hold him? Did you feed his blood to your roots? Who are these new trees? Look how they glisten against an unshackled firmament. Did you tell them that his blood was the only nourishment you could provide that entire season? Did you tell them it was a winter of blood? No rain, no snow, blood storms, lightning and thunder, lifting other names unto the wind's tongue. So many names for the wind to carry. So much hair, teeth, bones for the ground to gather. I wanted to ask the trees, who will carry your stories? Who are your historians? Who will measure the rings of ropes that wrapped around your waist, your shoulders, under your arms, beneath your head? I wanted to ask the trees, did you forget to breathe when the red thunder inside you painted everything the color of love? I want to ask the trees, do you remember? Do your branches still crackle with his weight? Do you shudder? Do you know mercy?
Thank you to the Orange County Community Remembrance Coalition for allowing me to make remarks today. Today we remember Manly Macaulay, Daniel Morrow, Jefferson Morrow, Washington Morrow, Cyrus Guy, and Wright Woods, and for those whom we have no record. When I think about the perspective of this moment, being currently a judge in the courts of the state of North Carolina, I think about the term justice as we bandy it about and how we use it frequently to discuss matters of great importance. But then I'm also brought to my memory is the quote from the Reverend Martin Luther King, "Without justice, there is no peace." So if we want justice in these United States, there needs to be some peace. And we remember these injustices so that we can have justice in our courts, so we know what not to do. Because these individuals, the people that killed and murdered them, had no trials, but went about their days, every day, getting up in the morning, having breakfast, having lunch, having dinner, hugging their children, hugging their grandchildren, and then dying in peace. So we, as part of the judicial system, need to strive to ensure, as the prophet Amos said, "Let justice run down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream." And we also need to remember, because the African diaspora, we are all related. As the late Haile Selassie said, throughout history, it has been the inaction of those who could have acted, the indifference of those who should have known better, the silence of the voice of justice when it mattered the most, that has made it possible for evil to triumph. Let us not allow evil to triumph in these days. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jen Weaver, and I am the mayor of Hillsborough. And it is a deep honor to be here in this room with all of you. In Hillsborough, we are one of the oldest towns in the state of North Carolina, and we pride ourselves on remembering our history, including the painful parts. But the fact that we are gathered here in this courtroom for this occasion shows us that we have a lot of work to do on that front. And history is that. It is a remembering. What we choose to remember, and it is a choice, is important. With each passing day, that becomes more and more clear that what we choose to remember is directly related not just to our past, but to the future that we want to build. It is a sacred honor to be part of this day that will create a tie that binds Hillsborough and Northern Orange County to the Legacy Museum and to the National Memorial for Peace and Justice. Our family had the opportunity to visit that site in Montgomery last year, and the power of visiting the museum and the lynching memorial, searching the rows of jars and the steel columns for the name Manly Macaulay cannot be put into words. Future visitors, and I hope to go back again, but future visitors from our community will be searching for the names of those we remember today, and they will remember. And if music filters into this room from the festival that's happening outside, I hope it will serve as a reminder that we see these men that we remember today in their full humanity, including the joys and the loves that they had before their lives were cut short.
Greetings. I am Sally Green, one of your Orange County Commissioners, and also a member of the Orange County Community Remembrance Coalition. It is my privilege and also a solemn responsibility to share with you these words, the resolution that my board passed in commemoration of these events. Orange County Board of County Commissioners, resolution apologizing for past racial terror lynching. Whereas racial terror lynching occurred with startling frequency across the United States in the aftermath of the Civil War and from Reconstruction through the middle of the 20th century. And whereas lynching became a practice predominantly inflicted upon Black or African American men, women, and children by white individuals, vigilante mobs, and law enforcement officials to instill fear and to thwart the social, economic, and political advancement of Black people. And whereas on August 7th, 1869, 19-year-old Washington Morrow and his older brother Nelson, both of whom were African American farm workers, were seized from the Hillsborough jail by a mob of masked Klansmen, carried south of town, then shot, with Washington dying from his wounds a few days later. And whereas on September 6th, 1869, Wright Malone, a Black farmer who was working alongside his father at his family's coal kiln, was abducted by 4 masked white men and hung near the banks of the Little River. And whereas on October 14th, 1869, Thomas Jefferson Morrow, whose son Washington Morrow was murdered 2 months earlier, and his brother-in-law Daniel Morrow, both of whom were Black farmers working near Hillsborough, were pulled away from their family homes by a masked mob of Ku Klux Klan raiders and hung. And whereas on December 2nd, 1869, Cyrus Guy, a 20-year-old Afro-Indigenous farmer who had grown up in a family emancipated long before the Civil War, was seized from his family farm by a mob of Klansmen and hung in a public site near the intersection of Fawcett Mill Road and Lebanon Road. And whereas on or about October 30th, 1898, Manly McCauley, an 18-year-old black man, was seized by a mob of white men accused of eloping with a married white woman and lynched from a dogwood tree near current-day Hatch Road and Old Greensboro Road, and the 4 men tried for the lynching were acquitted. And whereas, in denial of their constitutional rights to a fair trial and without the opportunity to present their defense, the aforementioned men were brutally executed. And whereas Orange County elected officials failed to safeguard Washington Morrow and failed to hold accountable the killers of the 6 racial terror lynching victims. Now therefore be it resolved that the Orange County Board of Commissioners does hereby acknowledge that criminal acts of racial terror lynching were committed against numerous named and unnamed individuals, including Washington Morrow, Wright Malone, Daniel Morrow, Thomas Jefferson Morrow, Cyrus Guy, and Manly McCauley. And be it further resolved that the Orange County Board of Commissioners now apologizes to all victims of racial terror lynching in Orange County perpetrated or condoned by past Orange County elected officials. And be it moreover resolved that the Orange County Board of County Commissioners herewith expresses our deepest sympathies to the families and descendants for all women and men who were murdered by racial terror lynching and for the denial of their dignity and basic human rights.
to believe that you could need me, to reflect upon what might have I still hear the ringing of a church bell in the morning. The peacocks still calling out their sad and bitter warning. Take a final look around you. Hold the memory forever. Find a quiet place inside where you can listen to what all your heart is saying.
Freedom dreams. I'm tired. I am tired of dreaming to survive, of surviving just to dream, only then to survive the dream long enough to see it sour, long enough for it to nightmare and then wake up deferred, long enough to remember the real meaning of dreams, which is to say long enough to remember the real meaning of long enough, to remember the real meaning of the yet and the still, to remember that more dreams will come because they have to, because more dreams have came and have always become more than just dreams. You see, dreams, they are our daily bread. They are our day given, our kingdom come, our lamentation of millennia past and millennia yet to come. You see, dreams don't die. not any more than they live. You see, we don't die, not any more than we live. We are an ancient phenomena, a big bang, a splinter in the consciousness of an ever-expanding universe, an itch to pick up stick and tap it on earth. We are a rhythm, a trick to pass the time by making time, a steady stammering hi-hat and a scared snare roll. You see, we've always been here, making time. Steady and stammering, snaring and scared, grasping at ghosts never believed in and holding on to the ones we know to be real. Real like those dreams, like the ones that enveloped ancestors' every reason for being, the ones that weigh so heavy that we may sing for a day when we have to dream no more, but nothing ever escapes the dream, only freedom. And so we dream we are free, even when we're not.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to begin today by welcoming you and thanking you again for coming here to spend this time with us today, because I know this is a busy day, and we are grateful that you chose to come here. I'm Danita Mason-Hogans, and people say that I'm a local historian, but I prefer to call myself a memory worker. We are here today to recognize and honor the lives of these men whose life was cut short by white terror. But the reason that I call myself a memory worker instead of a historian is because there are many people who are more degreed than me, have studied history longer than me, and are actually employed to tell it. In 2019, I did a TED Talk about my work at Duke with the veterans of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC, to challenge the notion that historical authority rests only with people who are degreed in history, and offered that people who live the history are actual authorities too. And as a seventh generational Orange County resident, I can tell you that there are a lot of local people far more knowledgeable than me about the history of Black people in this area. And God and I both know that people with degrees are lacking when it comes to understanding and contextualizing local history. But let me give a shout out to Freddie Parker, who is not in that category. And this is why I call myself a memory worker, because I believe that memorialization is critically important. I've been in the leadership of telling the story of the Chapel Hill 9, Black women in the movement in this area, and the brutal murder of James Cates. In fact, I'm honored that the first soil collection ceremony done by this coalition was collected at my parents' house to honor the life of Manly Macaulay, a relative of my grandfather, Joe Albert Macaulay. So memorialization in history is important to me. But I must agree with Brian Stevenson, founder of our parent organization, the Equal Justice Initiative, when he spoke 3 months ago at a program to honor Dr. Martin Luther King, that we've got to create a new relationship with this history. He said that when we tell the truth about history, then we change things. Learning about history is one thing, doing something about it is another. Stevenson also said that memorials and museums are wonderful, but not enough. We're going to have to take action, as Renee Price said. He suggested that if we're serious about truth and justice, then we have to do 3 things. The first is to stay proximate and connected to the oppressed and poor and marginalized and the excluded, because this is the only way, by being proximate to them and to those who are suffering, that teaches us what this moment really is about and requires. We have to see things that we have not seen and move things that we have not been moved. The third is that we've got to be willing to do uncomfortable things. In my view, as a memory worker, I am much more interested in understanding why history happened and not just what happened. I'm disturbed by the moral and mental sickness that would allow one human to take the life of another in this way. And as a memory worker, though, I'm actually more disturbed by the faces in the crowds of the lynching photos who gathered together and brought their children to witness these acts of inhumanity. History should be a tool of assessment and a roadmap for future planning and repair. Since February, our community has hosted a 4-session book club series with the authors of From Here to Equality, where we have taken a deep look into the ways in which history has impacted where Black people here in Orange County are today, and what has created the disparity so great that Orange County has the greatest wealth gap in the state of North Carolina, and why Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools have the second largest achievement and therefore opportunity gap in the nation. In our area, we have one of the most degreed populations in the nation and the least opportunity for degrees for Black children. We cannot just witness that. As a memory worker, I'm compelled to say that we have a bad habit of witnessing and learning about past atrocities of disparity and not expressing the needed urgency to solve them today. But I truly believe that we are in the last throes of white supremacy. So what looks like darkness now is actually the dark before the dawn if we're prepared in this day to make it so. We have a real opportunity to make a better world for those who have been here for generations and have served, nurtured, and built this community. So let's take it. As a memory worker, I can't come here to simply commemorate the lives of these men. I have work to do, and some of that requires creating a better opportunity for their children who are here today. And I'll leave you with the words of the great historian, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who said that to handicap a student by teaching him that his Black face is a curse and that his struggle to change his condition is hopeless is in fact the worst kind of lynching. I want to honor them. Let's do it together. Thank you.
I want to thank you, Sister Mason, and also the Orange County Community Remembrance Coalition, and you all as the audience, the opportunity to input some word of spirituality in the things that we do within our community. I hold, thank you, within my hand the substance that enhances life all over this world, and the soil that had been taken of the ground where death has swallowed up those who had lost their life by a terrible terrorist act. But as I pour the water into the soil as a representative of continued life, I ask myself each day a question that had been asked by so many. Is God pleased with my life? Is God pleased with the things that I do and the life that I live? Is God pleased with my interpretation of loving my fellow man? I know in the scripture it said that loves will cover a many multitude of sin. But do we recognize that when we impede the rights of others, we don't see that as being sinful? When we fail to allow others to express themselves as being a father, a brother, or a son, or a community member to enhance life for others, when those privileges are denied, is that an act of love? So I ask ourselves, we who are a vessel, a beacon of light, of health in this world, when we talk about unity, are we ashamed to walk down the streets with one another because we are afraid someone is going to judge us as not being within their clique? When we assault one another, whether it's verbally or physically, or taunt them emotionally, did we ask ourselves, is God pleased with the life that I live? We often say that the Lord is my shepherd. Yes, sir. But how can he be if we do not allow his word to guide our lives that we suppose to live before him? If we are created in the image of God, then how could we hate that which he have created and yet say we love him? How can we hate each other because of the texture of our hair or the color of our skin? I didn't come to give a sermon. That's all right. That's all right. But who I am is what I say. And what I say is what I do. If I say I love you, I'll tell you why. Because I want you to love my child as I love you. I want my child to have the confidence of walking these streets that I did not have growing up in my time. But I did put myself out there to allow myself to be a protector of the democracy in which we live. I served in these United States military because I too had a dream that I too also will grow and become a part of the community that will protect and serve. And through my journey, I have made many friends because I continue to ask myself that question: is God pleased with my life? Is he pleased with the things that I say? Is he pleased with the life that I live? Because I want the things that I do encourage others to be better. I encourage my daughter, my nieces and my nephews, my cousins, be better than you think I am. They said, Uncle Peter. I said, sure. I have done wrong, but by the grace of God, I have overcome those things to be a beacon in the society in which I live. So therefore, if I may, unto the creator of all things, I humble myself to be thy servant, to be thy light in this world, that the hatred that exists will come to naught. Let not hate enter into the hearts of those that are seeking justice and liberty and freedom for all. Help us to endure this journey, that we tell the narrative. Let us tell the story of our existence, because we can only tell our own story. But by your wisdom, God, by your wisdom, that we'll continue to speak truth in the existence of our lives, that others may partake of peace, love, and joy as they grow. In our days, I give honor to our Father, which art in heaven, and I will praise and exalt his name, that we all may know peace and love in our journey. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. My name is Paris Miller-Fouché, and I serve on the Chapel Hill Town Council, and I also have the pleasure of serving as co-chair along with Danita Mason-Hogan for the OCCRC 1869 Soil Collection Committee. And I stand with you this afternoon with Mr. Glenn Henson, who is a UNC professor of American history. Setting the context. It is important that we set the context of the numerical 4-month time period and events that led to the racial terror lynchings of Washington Morrow, Wright Malone, Daniel Morrow, Thomas Jefferson Morrow, and Cyrus Guy. Following emancipation, like the rest of the South, Orange County was reeling after the end of a bloody civil war and the collapse of an economic system built on slave labor, all in the face of Northern Union military rule and occupation. For many whites and former Confederates in Orange County, life under these conditions were unacceptable. Congress ordered North Carolina to draw up a new state constitution. The General Assembly decided to hold a referendum in November 1867 to choose delegates to a constitutional convention to be held in early 1868. Many former Confederate leaders had not yet taken an oath of allegiance to the United States and were not eligible to serve. But chosen for the convention were 13 Black representatives to represent 19 majority Black counties. The members of this Black caucus were not legislators exactly, but they came together at the state capitol in January of 1868 to take part in a very important process. Amongst this Black caucus were individuals such as James Walker Hood, who would lead efforts for universal education during Reconstruction. And under Governor William Holden, he was appointed Assistant Superintendent of the State Board of Education in charge of Negro schools. Hood founded 2 historically black colleges, Livingston College and Fayetteville State University. This Black Caucus would also usher in the first years of Black office holders. Black self-definition, political and educational upward mobility challenged white supremacist sentiments of order. The invasion, occupation, economic depression, and political weakening of those who served the Confederacy would transform Orange County into a center of organized white supremacist resistance to the social revolution being forced upon a defeated people. The centers of Klan activity were in Jones, Lenoir, Chatham, in Orange County. Governor Holden declared those counties in a state of insurrection, and he vowed to break the Klan. He subsequently employed 20 detectives to assist him, but his efforts did little to nothing to deter Klan activity. Former slaveholders who could no longer depend on involuntary slave labor to keep their businesses and farms solvent were also witnessing severe drought conditions covering over half of the state. And in July of 1869, 3 barns in Orange County burned to the ground in a single evening. Facing economic ruin, a prominent white farmer committed suicide. Whites, haunted by the possibility of Black resistant movement, most publicly evident in the burning of barns on white-owned farms, gave way to the realities of violence against Black lives. And white racial terror followed in August, September, October, and December of 1869.
August 8th, 1869, Washington, Morrow. The charge was barn burning. On that late July night, the feed and livestock barns of 3 prominent white Orange County farmers, all of whom had been enslavers just a few years earlier, went up in flames. Suspicion quickly fell on the family of Jefferson and Lucinda Morrow, who had been enslaved by one of those farmers and who had only recently been evicted from the farm of one of the others. Authorities arrested 2 of the Morrow's sons, 20-year-old Nelson and 19-year-old Washington Morrow, and carried them to the Hillsborough jail, just located a few short feet from where we are sitting now. Until about a year before the jailing, the Morrow brothers, who had grown up in enslavement, had been living with their parents and 6 younger siblings. As the oldest of the family's children, they had left their family's home place to sharecrop on a nearby farm. That was where the sheriff arrested them. They'd been in that jail cell for 2 weeks when word went out that one of the farmers whose barns had been burnt had killed himself in a fit of despair. The very next night, a group of masked and robed Klansmen broke into the jail, seized the Morrow brothers, and carried them across the Eno River Bridge at Dimmock's Mill. There, the Klansmen questioned them and ultimately decided that they likely did not burn those barns. So they told them to run, and then started shooting. Nelson Morrow escaped unscathed. Washington, though, was hit. Within 2 days, Washington Morrow was dead, the first documented death in Orange County at the hands of the Klan.
September 6, 1869, Wright Woods Malone. Historical records aren't kind to the memory of Wright Malone, leaving little evidence of his life. We do know, however, that he was a young black farmer who likely lived with his parents and 3 siblings, the youngest of whom was only 11, on a farmstead near the banks of the Little River in the eastern part of Orange County. Mr. Malone spent his childhood in enslavement, living in a household where the parents claimed by 2 different white enslavers. Those parents, Melinda and Squire Malone, formalized their long-standing marriage immediately after emancipation. On the evening of September 6, 1869, Wright Malone was helping his father fire the family's charcoal kiln, usually an all-night affair, when 4 masked white men showed up on horseback with pistols drawn. They bound the young Malone and rode away with him, telling his father that they were carrying him to the Hillsborough jail. The worried father later rode into Hillsborough, hoping to bring his presumably incarcerated son some food, only to discover that his Wright Malone had never made it to the jail. 6 days later, a neighbor discovered Wright Malone's body hanging from a tree not far from the family's home.
October 14, 1869, Daniel Morrow and Thomas Jefferson Morrow. 2 months after the shooting of Washington Morrow, 1 month after the hanging of Mr. Malone. The brother Nelson still in the Hillsborough jail. The Klan once again targeted members of the Morrow family. This time, the mounted mob attacked the homes of the Morrow brothers' parents, Thomas Jefferson and Lucinda Morrow, and that of their uncle and aunt, Daniel and Sally Morrow. The 2 families, whom had both worked in the same forced labor camp during enslavement, now lived on nearby farms just north of Hillsborough. Jefferson Morrow was in his early 40s at the time, with 6 children in his home. Daniel Morrow, likely in his late 30s, living with his wife, their 4 children, and his elderly mother. Both families were making do as farmers in post-emancipation Orange County. But festering white anger over those still unresolved barn burnings brought armed and masked riders to their homes in the dead of the night, with the Klansmen dragging the 2 fathers out of their houses and into the darkness. Terrified that the Klansmen would return, Lucinda and Sally gathered their children and ran into the nearby fields, spending the night there. The next morning, they set out in search of their husbands. They discovered them about a half-mile away, both hanging from side-by-side trees. 17 months later, Lucinda Morrow was called to testify about those lynchings. In her testimony, she boldly named 4 of the disguised men who had attacked her home, saying that she recognized both their voices and their clothes. None of those men was ever charged with those murders.
December 1st, 1869, Cyrus Guy. Cyrus Guy was a 24-year-old Afro-Indigenous farmer who had never been enslaved, having grown up in a family listed as free persons of color since the early 1800s. Though details about his life are slim, Cyrus Guy, called Cy by family and friends, had likely grown up just across the Orange County line in Alamance County, where his farming parents, Walter and Kezia Guy, 2 younger sisters and 2 younger brothers still lived at the time of his death. At some point in the late 1860s, the young Guy moved into Orange County, where he found work on a farm northwest of Hillsborough. Somewhere around the first day of December in 1869, a mob of masked Klansmen, later described by Black elder Ben Johnson as more than 100 strong, seized Cyrus Guy and carried him into the woods on the High Rock Road just above the Orange County poorhouse. The 85-year-old Ben Johnson, who grew up enslaved near Hillsborough and who offered his testimony to a WPA interviewer in 1937, recalled the murder vividly, asserting, "I never will forget when they hung Cy Guy." The alleged offense, as was so often the case with racial terror lynchings, was a scandalous insult to a white woman. And the predetermined sentence was death. As injustice and a reign of racial terror swept through the South during the era of lynching, Ida B. Wells assumed her role as a formidable voice in the fight against racism in America. She saw herself as a child of Reconstruction, the daughter of formerly enslaved parents who transitioned into freedom person activists. And it is important to connect Wells to her parents' advocacy, for she is not an anomaly, but rather a continuation of her parents, an echo of many African Americans who came before them, who were fighters and forever rooted in the affirmation of their humanity. And today, I challenge each of us to pick up that mantle and legacy of freedom and justice and carry it forward to fight against racism and violence, against Black lives in all of its iterations. We must continue to tell the truth. We will not be silenced. For as Ida B. Wells stated, the way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon them. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Krishna Mayfield, and I am here as a representative of the Whitted Browder family of Orange County, North Carolina, of which the Morrows were a member. Our family is indigenous, African American, Caucasian, and we have been in this area as long as anyone can remember. We have not forgotten the Morrows. We have not forgotten anyone in our family who has passed on, because as we know, the day that someone truly dies is the day that someone forgets your name. We appreciate this recognition and the change in society that has now begun to recognize our history and our contributions, even though they've been there the whole time. And we feel like this is very important, but it's also important that we share our stories ourselves and that we make sure that everyone is aware of these things. To be honest, it's sad to know that this story might not have been known if these gentlemen had died just a year earlier. A lot of the information about their deaths was contained in the 1870 census because they died in 1869. As genealogists, I'm not a historian. I was not aware of the true nature of their deaths until Danita reached out to me to explain they were lynched. According to the 1870 census, they were murdered and nothing else. This story was not told. You find this over and over again. You know, we share our stories, but anyone who's ever watched Finding Your Roots or any other story knows how quickly and easily our history is lost if we don't share it. So it is important to make sure that this is documented, shared, that your family members are aware of it, that our family members are aware of it. Again, we're not historians, but we do appreciate the support and the understanding of our history, and we thank everyone who made this happen. We're very appreciative. I do wish that more of my family members were able to, although I'm actually related to a good number of people in this room. Our family's quite large. If you're from Hillsborough, we're probably related to you. And I'm sure most of you know the Whittits, at least, if not anyone else, but we take great pride in our history. And, you know, we always want to lift up those people who accomplish great things, but for every one of those people that we still know and remember, there are hundreds of people that we do not talk about, we don't remember, and they're just as important. You know, one of the saddest things about American history, and that I think, you know, many people do not understand, is the fact that our governmental system is premised on the fact that African Americans were considered less than human from day one. 3/5 of a person, not a whole person. Anyone who studied racial designations knows that, you know, this one drop rule, which makes no sense whatsoever, but it still exists to this day. But it was designed to keep us enslaved and downtrodden. But at the end of the day, we are human beings just like everyone else. We have pride in our history and our accomplishments. We have helped to build this country since the very beginning. You know, if you drive anywhere in this area, you will see our contributions. So I just ask, and thank you for coming, but ask that you do not forget us and that you recognize our family.
Thank you so much, Krishna. I am reading, or will read, a statement from Miss Edwina Satterfield Newman, who is a Morrow descendant who, for health reasons, cannot be here this morning or this afternoon. Before doing that, though, I want to just connect a few dots. I mentioned earlier that there were several people that had helped us in this work in terms of developing these narratives. And I mentioned Dr. Deborah Hamlin, who some years ago in the 1970s, when she was at Duke University, did her PhD thesis on a jurist, Albion Tourget, and we'll be having a program about him on May 6th, and there are flyers out there. But I mention that now because in that PhD dissertation, she made reference to Morrows and to the lynchings that took place here in Orange County in 1869. And for the first time, we became aware that there was a person by the name of Anderson Morrow, who was ordered by the Klan to bury the bodies of Thomas Jefferson and Daniel Morrow. And so in reading this information and doing some additional research, we came upon the fact that Dr. Hamlin had actually interviewed and done a lot of work with the aunt of Edwina Newman Satterfield. That woman is now deceased, but we were able to connect with Ms. Satterfield, and I will be reading the brief statement that she issued. The other thing that I will say, and this is probably self-evident at this point, what we are talking about today and what happened in the fall of 1869, is about the war. It was a virtual war on black families and communities following the so-called Civil War. So there was this other war that took place to undo whatever gains that could have come from Reconstruction and the Civil War, and what happened to these 5 men and their families, and indeed the black community in Orange County was a part of that war. So, Edwina Satterfield Newman, the Morrow family descendants, I give thanks to the joint efforts of the Orange County Community Remembrance Coalition and Equal Justice Initiative for this program today. It is a reminder of the dark history of human suffering and the brutality of the atrocities and horrors of slavery. Today, we come to respect and understand that words nor actions can change the past, but we can, moving forward with knowledge and recognition. Echoes of the past are bridges aligning the past with the present. They live and breathe through time. To remember is to never forget, so the past may be never repeated.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris Sason. I'm a Soils Collection Committee member as well. I'll say briefly, I am a UNC alum twice, and I wanted to state that a lot of us that come to this place, there was a pastor, I think, at University Baptist said some years ago that our Milltown produces degrees. So because this community, particularly the Black community in Chapel Hill, has helped produce me, I decided to stay around and try to help in the community instead of just get my degree and leave. But right now what we're gonna do is prepare some of the soil for descendants that are here. So if you just give us a moment, we're gonna ask descendants to come up if they like, and we're gonna give them some of the soil. And we'll also have a time for everyone to take a little bit later, but wanted to center the families first.
While we were waiting to get this set up, one thing we neglected to do was to let you know where the rest facilities are, the bathrooms, at the end of the hall, to your left. Ready enough.
So what we just did was to hand some soil to the members of the family. We have a little extra if you'd like to come, and a few jars if you'd like to share in this moment with us. Paris is going to instruct a little further.
So at this time, if I could get my volunteers who are going to help out with community members' participation with helping to fill the jars, that we will keep a jar here in Orange County, and another jar will also go to the Lynching Museum down in Alabama. And so if you would like to participate in this part of the dedication ceremony, we will ask that you come here orderly, of course. There are some cups already pre-filled, and it's important that we keep each jar of soil separate. As you will notice that Washington Morrow's jar is not here, but we do have smaller jars to represent. We are still in the process. This is a process with the initiative to get that jar recognized. And once we do, he will be honored with a jar similar to the other 4 victims. And so you will come in through this way and then back out. And if you need any assistance, please let us know. We will try our best to accommodate you. So again, for those who would like to participate, we would invite you at this time to please come and help us in the filling of the jars. So we are going to give closing remarks, but before we get to that, I just want to remind everyone about what will happen to the jars. So as I stated, we are still waiting for Washington Morrow's jar. We're still in the process of getting that name recognized with Equal Justice EJI. But for the other jars, notice each individual has 2 jars. One will go down to the museum. And so the soil that you've placed in those jars today will be on display for our nation to see and witness. And one will remain here with us here in Orange County so that we can continue to tell their stories. We do have some extra jars for both our committee members, also for the descendants of the families. We still want to, we still have some soil to give to the family members. But we also have for community members, if any of you would like a jar. Please let us know and we will try our best to accommodate you in that way. And I'm gonna turn it over to Ms. Danita, who will close us out. Thank you.
Thank you, Paris. Y'all think the spirit was in the room today? Did y'all feel it? I felt it. Did y'all feel it? So we want to end this program as we began in the spirit. We thought the best way to end the program and to begin our journey towards a better, more just, more equitable society, is to invite Cortland and Jasmine up, because you know, music is a spirit, and our words carry spirits. So we thought that was the most fitting way to end the program today. So I would like to ask if y'all would come on up and bless us in the spirit.
Beautiful. I mean, have they actually ever seen your beauty? That life presence, the glow, the network beneath your feet. Not your foliage, not your accents, not your smell, or the texture of your bark. But yes, your raised crown. Yes, your adornments. Yes, your scent. And yes, the pigment of your skin. I wonder if they can see what I see. Your family is here for you. Your sisters and brothers fuel your growth, and in return, share your breath of insight and clarity to the world. What one of us feels, we all feel. The pulse of nature runs deep. I still reminisce on the days when a heavy wind would topple you. You weren't as strong as you are now, with your arms wide and fingers spread, ready for an embrace from any direction. It's hard for people not to see what you were meant for. But the stronger you get, the more susceptible for abuse you have become. Honey, it pains me to see you go through this. This unethical use of proving oneself to others. Power struggles of blind arrows that cut everything down, attempting to sever the vitality of man. Do they not see you cry when it hurts? I do. A mother knows when her baby needs help. I hear it in your voice, your staggered sway, and it alarms me, even when you are still, as if death has made you hold your breath and freeze from shock. Dormant, yet wanting to run. I have watched you endure the tightening of the threads, leaving a rope burn around your wrist and shoulders, now prepped to callous. And the place where children should be swinging from tires and makeshift benches are now crowded by men, women, and children pointing. Just know they're not pointing at you. They are pointing at your new fruit. They don't see you look away in disgust when the heavy weight of fruiting bodies are loaded 3 and 4 times deep on your limbs. They don't see you whimper silently when the load is too much for you to bear and you break. They just leave you broken and bruised as they move on to your siblings to test their strength too. They don't see you. They only ever leave you. They leave you with packages tied with string, sometimes enclosed, sometimes exposed. I taught you to breathe with covered comfort, and by any means possible, stand your ground. If only your adaptive growth could shake them off and share your life with them the way that was intended. But they return only to leave you again, this time with packages that burn slow like incense, embers of earth's core that simmer dry to a light ash. Don't they know what fire can do to you? Don't they know that even with all your might, you can still get scars and whelps that never truly heal? Take your hands off my young. Don't you ever touch my child. You are my baby no matter how old you get. And with your age, you will see trauma, some meant for you, and some that you only witness because the wind blew your way. I know how good your memory is, photographic at best, and sentient all the rest. I know that you always remember and never forget. Well, I need you to know this one thing. Know that you are here, present, a mighty force, and that you are my joy, my love, my child. I will never leave you, but some things you will have to endure alone. Some things I cannot teach you, but I can be your guide and give you strength to let you see that what you have become is magnificently bigger than what people use you for. You are not meant to hold other souls in your hands. Let those ties that bind go. Let them go. Set them free. Walk with them on the path to their own ancestors. Show them the way. Go on. I know it's not your job. I know you just want to smile at the sun and speak with the birds, share your new fragrance, and travel through the fashions of the season. But here, right now, you have been chosen to house a dirty act. All I can help you to do now is find your peace and to forgive. Forgive, but never forget. You couldn't forget even if you tried. That is the gift and the curse of being one of my trees. Everything is recorded. That is our duty. Every handprint, knife dagger, bear hug, bird's nest, and yes, even this new type of weighted fruit are things you, my dear, can never forget. But stay strong for me. Do what you came here to do. Even when the stench of decaying flesh gets too much to bear, still lift them up. When the crowds of families and the masses leave, don't be ashamed of what you've helped them to do. You didn't have a say in the matter. They didn't ask for your permission, nor did they intend to. Let them leave, and you continue to stand, just as tall as ever before, back straight, chin high, eyes wide open. Life will come to them differently now. You will see. Wash your hands every chance you get to clear their evidence. But just know some marks will be ingrained and remain. The quiet after the joyful picnics are over bring the scavengers of the night, stripping the hanging clothes and the shoe soles. The vultures circle round with a concentric descent. The flies layer, making hills and valleys on what was once skin. Everything eventually melts down to the earth's surface, to my surface, I will absorb it all, and as consequence, relinquish all negativity back into the falls of my earth and my oceans. I will take your worries, purify your veins, and restore the flow of life back to balance. Honey, when the day finally breaks after your long night of pain and fatigue, remember that we made it this far to enjoy the wonders of your ever-present being. So smile for me, for you are vibrant, fertilized, and deeply rooted.
A letter to allies of new and old, written June 7th, 2020. Dear allies, I'm glad to have you on board, but please never forget that this is an escape boat. This is a life raft severed, suspended. It is a sacred salve of wreckage from a cause long lost and abandoned. This here is no cruise line. It is no search boat even. There are no saviors here, only survivors. There is no going back. There is not even a back to return to. No, this here be a one-way trip called freedom, to a land free from the conceits of liberty, a land far free from this current condition, far closer to a human one. There is space for you there too. For you here, maybe. See, they say that it was written that many are called, but few are chosen. To which I like to add, who actually chose themselves. You see, all of us already on board are just grateful to be alive. To have not been capsized by the waves reverberating in the wake of that original charter called Conquest. You see, we here are hurting, yes, but we are not hurt. I need you to understand that we are hurting, but we are not the hurt. There is more to pain than its infliction. Know that. And while consolation is certainly welcomed, it is not because it gets us someplace, because it gives us some false sense of hope, because it makes us feel better. No, we are well aware that we are mid-sea. No shore in sight, just 360 degrees of endless blue. Resting sites for dreams and bodies. No, we are well aware that we all may die out here, in this small space that none of us asked to share. And yet, for as long as I can remember, we've been doing just that, sharing, caring for one another, praying over one another, being here for one another, valuing the lives of those who made it as much as the lives of those who did not know. Here, consolation is community. It is welcomed in practice because we know that we have to find a way to live out here. Whether these souls see solid ground again or not, we have to find a way to live. So welcome aboard. Be prepared to get intimate. Understand that there is nothing to be fixed here, only felt, only presence, only being, only learning, only living, loving. There is not enough space for your good here, nor your guilt. And while it warms me to have you on board, I need you to understand that you have to be here for you and not just me. I need you to see that this aftermath and afterlife, this divine disparaged living is far greater than the one lost with that cause. To be here must mean that you've made it off, that you did not go down with that ship of shame, that parting with what you were did not kill you, or at least not the parts worth holding on to. Know that the reasons you've gotten on board do not have to remain the reasons you choose to stay. Know that staying is not wholly your decision, not wholly within your control. Know that this here is a home. So welcome home. May we all live long enough to see you become fellow passengers of this plight.